So this selection of restoratives is designed to work on the stimulation of the respiratory, but also some nice and a secure alignment for shoulders, for the limbs and the levers back towards the respiratory system. So what I want you to start with is your bolster center. Your block is right in front of your bolster and it's flat, so it's part of your addition to your bolster. And you're going to kind of literally situate your hips to that edge, the back of the pelvis. So what's on the edge of my block, the base of my block, is like my tailbone. So I'm actually sitting on my block. And then I'm closest to a wall. And you might like the wall for some of this work, but it could be a little bit of a rambunctious beginning. We'll find out. So as you lower back, let your legs reach down. You could start with a bend as your head lowers to your blanket, but feel kind of how your lift is on your bolster. You can change it. You can make it so that you're a little farther down on the bolster, so it's the ribs. Now, the goal is not like to pull the ribs in. That's a challenge, right? Your work is on spreading them out. So whatever our habit is, you might kind of get back to that, but your work is on this lift elevation of the ribs, and then everything kind of opens for the lungs. So take the time to figure that out. Let the legs perhaps straighten. If you don't like to straighten your legs for the first few moments or minutes, just keep them bending if that's easier on your back, as long as you need to. It's perfectly fine. And then we'll add some sand. Now, if you're going to keep your knees bending, you probably will put your sand across your ribs. It's kind of hard to find the sand on the front of the legs if your legs are bending. Okay, that wouldn't be that helpful. So bending leg, sand on ribs. Straight leg or straight-ish, sand across the thigh lids. And I really like this little bit of a touch to the wall. It feels kind of nice. But you have to be a little careful that you're not kind of forcing, pushing, because your emphasis is that the tailbone and the back actually feels good from this. So if something pushing the wall is causing a little of an event of pressure, work with it. I do a lot of self-exploration today. And then you'll figure out if you want one or two blankets. I'm kind of thinking I want one, but I'm going to stay with the two because I mentioned that was good for us. Okay. Send your hands back to hold your belt and just get those arms back. Get them to reach. Get a feeling that the blankets, for those of us that kind of have this orientation on the blankets, this works really nicely for my shoulders to move and have some height. And there's some of you that will have your arms spread a little wider and your arms will be on the ground. So yeah, your feet might not touch the wall. It may have, and then you adjusted your tailbone and you're not there anymore, but it'll change when we shift this design. So the first restorative design here is to let the eyes close after you sort it out. Even after you get your eyes closed, you might be sorting things out. And that's when it begins. And center the influence of an inhale through the centerpiece of the body. Maybe it's in the belly. Maybe it's lifting in the heart. And gather your attention on the even rhythm of your breath. Now it's okay if you're gripping the belt, but trying to isolate those tactics of pulling something, releasing an area. So your work is on noticing how to respond to this idea of a horizontal chest opener. Right? You might respond by moving your bolster a different way than I've shown. You might need to have the block situated lower, and even there's some space between the block and the bolster, that might work for some. But noticing the length in the center of the body and the ability to witness the simplicity here. It's not necessarily that exciting of a shape, but it creates a platform to move from. We're going to kind of start with our first piece. Relax your feet, even if your knees are bending, you could be here and your knees could relax together. That's an option. I kind of like that one too. If that seems easier on your back, that's what you take. But let's experience just a few more cycles of in and out breath with that inhale, filling the lungs, letting the abdomen soften. And the exhalation, easily letting go. Maybe feeling like there's further exhale that you would like to happen, but the body's in kind of a strict shape. So the exhale is, it's a little challenging in this shape, right? To get a chest opener, long exhale. It's like you're hydrating the tissues, but the exhale is short. Now, if you're gripping on, now try just a few of these cycles with maybe 2 cycles without holding the belt. Let the arms open. And maybe you feel your exhale kind of curls around the sides of the rib cage. When you have that strict pressure with your hands and the belt, it challenges the breathing cycle. So this could be a few cycles of breath without your arms holding the belt. Okay, now slide the sand off, even if you have it on the ribs, right? I want you to go sand free. Then you'll slide your feet in so the knees point up. So we're all meeting on this knee bending excursion. And hold on to your belt and have that grip. I find the 2 blankets works really good for me on this one. But what you're going to emphasize, and this will take a little bit of self kind of study, reflection, is you'll bring let's move the left knee in towards the chest first and bring your belt towards the knee. Okay, I want you to keep the hands holding the belt up, of course the belt too. And the right leg might kind of swing out. So here you press down through the right foot and you'll reach the left leg, but keep it off the floor. So reach the left foot down. This is where I kind of like that awareness of the wall, just to like touch it a little bit, but if it's not there, it's fine. And you still have the belt up towards the ceiling. And then you'll bring the left knee back towards the belt. And then you'll lower the left foot down and bring the arms overhead. Now, if your hip flexor feels a little gripped up there, I want you to try to keep the knees bending. Feel the arch of the spine, the tailbone pressing down towards the block. And then change so the right knee draws in, the belt goes towards the leg. You might not touch the leg. Let it be just kind of organic how it moves. Stretch the right leg down so the foot hovers over the ground. And then that right leg draws back towards the belt. And arms go overhead and foot touches down, knee bending. And now change sides. So we'll do this a few more times total. And experience when, oops, keep the belt up. And then the leg draws back in and lower down. So the breath phase is a little technical. So you can imagine that the exhale is a good time for the exertion when the knee comes up. Inhale when the leg stretches down. Exhale when the leg comes back up. And you can change that breath pattern if you like. You might not even be able to focus on the breath because you're trying to get it together with this. The issue I find of challenge is I try to move the belt too much. So I want to keep it firm and the movement balance with the leg. Now you might try the leg movement without using the belt. Just let your hands relax out to the sides, no belt grip, and taking one time on each side, right leg or whichever leg you're on, draws in, stretch that leg straight down, hover. And you can tell how the movement of the arms is a little helpful. for stretching the balance of the back. So get a feel of the movement cycle of the pelvis into the psoas. Okay, now take Baddha Konasana, so feet together, knees apart, no belt needed. And now you can kind of feel how the ribs have a different pressure. Right when my knees were pointing up, it was this kind of plain, no sensation, rib space. The hips were working. So this is to stretch right the groins, the inner hip, interior. And as the arms release out, let go of the eyes from stretching around to look, and just let the eyes rest. And now noticing if the neck is, curling a little bit. Is there starting to become a little flexion? And that's where I mentioned before, my work is on, just deciding. Sometimes you'll go at this point like, well, maybe I should have done this with one blanket. Well, we're almost to the next cycle of movements, but just feel what would change that. It would probably be moving the shoulders a little bit back, really letting the body release into the props, especially your upper back. And for me, that's an area I still have a little bit of grippiness to. I'm not quite surrendering my upper back. Okay, now bring the knees to point up. Scoot the feet to about hips distancing. And now we're going to shift to balance into the side. So I want you to let the weight really kind of flood your feet, like you're pressing into both heels. Like this puts a little more up into the chest, doesn't it? And then you'll roll to the left, and then you've got that block in your way. So just put it overhead. But I want you to take a move so that you're on the bolster with your elbow, your left elbow. And instead of getting long onto reaching back to the props, just let your weight lean into your left hip and feel the right leg trying to stretch a little bit back. So I want you just to notice the balancing through the front rim of the rib space, the abdominal rib space, right where the abdomen is right below the ribs. And feel how that leg stretches back. Get a moment there with that reach. And your left elbow touches onto the bolster, but see if you can get your waist to turn a little towards the bolster. Okay, take some caution here. You don't want to overly wring out your spine, but just kind of feel, if you kind of plot this one, your left elbow is making a dent on your bolster now, and your right leg is back. If this is too much pressure on your back, you can have your right leg closer or resting on your left foot. That's fine. And then as you move that right knee to the left knee, so you're in like this little fetal position with the legs, then I want you to stretch your knees down. So they're kind of straight down from the hips. I mean, I like mine to be straight down from the hips, but I'm trying. Get a ball, okay? And then take a moment here where the ball is just between the knees. Does everybody have a ball? I don't know if I even checked on the ball ideas. Stacy, no ball? Okay, block. Okay. Block is good. Okay, so I'll be with a block too. All right, so keep a position here, and you're trying to keep the left elbow down. You're not making any more twists, but you're moving your knees straight down. And then the shoulder gets a little cranky on this one to kind of hold this up. But get a feel of the waist trying to lift a little bit. You're still dunked down onto your elbow on the bolster. And then what you'll do is you'll take the ball or block away. It's just kind of a setup and imprint for the hip. And if you've got a ball, I think this is where a ball or block is fine. Place that on the inside of the right leg, and then start to lean down into your bolster. Oh, this feels good, especially for my left arm. And take a sandbag to the side and let that side have the sand on either the hip or the waist. You choose. Okay, so and if the waist doesn't feel like it's a good landing spot for the sand, it's kind of up in the ribs, kind of roaming, then probably putting it across would be better for some people, right? So this could be a good place for you to have it, especially if your hip flexor is a little bit of a gripper. if you got a gripping hip flexor often, use the sand at the base. If you got 2 sandbags, you could put both, but this is a good one for the hip, like this. Okay, so right arm goes either over, it goes either open or to the side or on the bolster. You have a lot of freedom on this one. But find the setting so that the arm is over. You're reaching with the ribs. If your arm is a little lower than above head, that's okay. You can still feel the situation you're in with the rib cage. I think the issue I have with my arm down here or on my side is to get my neck to relax into the blankets. Okay, so send the circulation through the rib cage on the side. And feel where your weight lies into the floor. And truly rest your eyes, your brain. Not even trying to center the brain, just rest the weight of it. And if you're kind of enthusiastic about having an arm reaching, that's completely fine. But if it does cause some pressure, detail right on the top of the shoulder, then that you would want to refer it into a different shape just to move out of that. It's okay to feel like this upper rib landmark, armpit, although it's rare to get a nice full armpit stretch. So if you can feel that, that's wonderful, right? Circulation into the lymph in the armpits. So nourishing by breathing. And feeling if the cycle of breath is something you focus on or if it's just kind of a passing awareness every once in a while. You know, tracing where we circulate in these poses, we want this to be a different experience than your daytime events. Something to have a little curiosity about for your very personal self study. So when we move out of the shape, we're going to be moving to more of a tabletop pose. So you're going to slide the sand away. And when you rotate, you may be facing away from the screen for a few moments, but the instruction will be very simplified as far as I can tell. Okay. So when you turn the face towards the bolster, you'll take a position with the props here. So I want you to have your bolster across. You're going to move your blankets so they are stretching straight back from your bolster. So it'll be kind of like the ideas that are going to be like a bolster. And hands, if your knees are really not having a good time with this, you can put some padding under it. I suppose you could put, I think you need this blanket stack. So it's a moment in time on the knees, but if you need something, put something under it. So the hands spread out. If you do use something, make sure it's thin so it doesn't lift the hips up very high. But the palms are spread out, the fingers are spread out, and you'll round your back so that you articulate that movement of the spine. Don't focus so much on it. Do the hips really sway? It's the spine. And then you work on loosening that strand of pressure up by taking it into a natural arch now. So alternating the movement of the pelvis and the spine by moving your chin down towards your chest, tucking the chin in, inhaling, arching, like a cat-cow sequence, but focus on the experiment of movement. And the movement might be kind of global in your body. It still might not be quite like spinal. So you might feel like the pressures of the body parts touching down mostly. I sometimes will, depends on my frame of mind. If I'm trying to complain about the pose, I might notice that, but take a last breath of the experience of rounding. Okay, and then you'll lower your hips down onto the bolster and you'll stretch the torso into what you're used to as like an upward dog. Now, if the hands are too far forward, it's kind of tricky to feel support in your spine, but it is easier. If my hands are farther forward, it'll be a little different in my back. So this will cause more pressure if my hands are farther to the bolster. Okay, now lower down, please. And yeah, this kind of makes it so I have to kind of scoot a little bit forward till I feel my hips are comfortable, but the elbows are down and you're in a little bit of a Sphinx pose. So the elbows press and the waist doesn't get all the blanket, so you're not pressing as much on those as the bolster. So I want you to take a recovery moment here of sending the arms farther forward and turn your head to your right. So we all have the same kind of version of events here with our circulation to the neck. And just feel what is it happens into your neck when you rotate. Right? Do you rotate to the high up into the base of the skull? Just notice how you're turning your head. And then the key would be to relax the head, not to turn and crank on it, but let it go. And breathing so the ribs feel that comfort. Exhales are longer when you're prone. Quite a bit easier to breathe out. You know, study how the neck changes to the second rotation. So this is easy going because we're already in the shape for the hips. But your event of movement is press down your elbows. Just lift your head a little bit up when you're turning your head right. And then we'll turn the head towards the left. But use this as a bit of a neck stretch. So I turn, I let my head lower down. My right side of my face is on the blanket. Yeah, you might go, oh, geez, it's different on the second side for your neck. And likely it is different because you probably have one side you sleep on a little bit more than the other. So that's time on the neck. So feel if your elbows get a little bit kind of restful, they can get a little sloppy on this position. So try to stretch the arms a little farther back to the back of your space. Reach out through them. Head is turned. Just feel what the quality of reach is for you. Take a few moments here. Yeah, the arm reach is completely determined by you if you want to strive or let the elbows really be heavy. Now slide, lift your head, slide the hands back, take up dog one more time. Maybe lift your eyes up when you lift your head. I don't know if trying to move your eyes up is going to necessarily help your balance, but it's interesting, I find. Have a nice stretch. Changes the movement of the face. Okay, now hands reach, press, palms, fingers wide. And then as you bend your elbows, you're gonna push down and let the hips move back. And then as you take your blanket back across the mat, like we did in side stage, right? We're gonna repeat that. I want you to take a moment here when you are palms pressing down, toes hook under, get ready to lift your knees up here. And then just take a little puppy pose. So it doesn't mean straight legs, heels to the ground. It just has a knee bending experience. It could feel like almost an upright push-up for you, like a little bit lifted, right? Because it's easier that way, but there's some pressure moving into the shoulders. Okay. Now, as you bend your knees a little more, lower down. Now change to that other side. We'll have a quick version of this on this side. So I want you to bring your knees so they're straight down. You have a ball or a block between. Your elbows are pressing into the bolster, or your right elbow, sorry, just the right one. I can't get my left elbow on the bolster if I try. So your legs are straight down. So it's not, I'm not trying to swing my legs back, right? It's straight from my hip down to the knee. It's not an exactly perfect ruler flush, but I'm certainly kind of working my back muscles here, and the block or the ball is the spacer. The block actually might be a better spacer on this one because it's defined, right? The ball you can squish. The block, you can't get past it. That's why it's called a block. Okay, so feel that there's a little bit of a swish into your back, okay? Now, taking the ball or block out, slide the right knee towards the bolster. Place the ball or block on the inside of that left leg. If I have a choice, I would use a ball on that one because it's a little easier on my skin. But as you lean down and you have your prop set up, yeah, maybe use the block overhead. Maybe you have to pull things a little closer in. But get the sand. If you're using sand across, remember if your hip flexor could use the support, use that. And then feel where the reach is through that left arm, right? Whether it's down and it's a different motion for the shoulder, and your head might be turning a little bit. So you have to kind of find where your basic true nature is in this pose. You're on your side, right? You decide, because it's your side. And filter the focus of breath through the ribs. So you're expanding. Even if it's like this really eensy-weensy kind of expansion, it's probably a little bigger in the abdomen that you feel that sometimes on the side stretch. Just kind of channel what the respiratory circulation is feeling like here. Swallowing, clearing the throat. This is always a pretty deep dive in our respiratory and our circulatory, vascular system. So slowness. Weight is on the head, right? You want to relax down to the brain. Feel what it's like when you lie into props, right? It's distinctly important to let your body kind of release down, and then the part that's open, you're capable of kind of revealing the circulation on that open side. Okay, so we've got the left side open, and then we're going to kind of keep that awareness in our seated shape coming up. So I'm going to kind of imprint that in my memory to keep that as a focus coming back. And when you roll to the right, feel like you kind of roll over to the right. And you let your sand slide off momentarily, huh? And then when you come up this time, let's get up on our bolster. And you'll take your position of, your blankets could be any which way. They don't need to be anything specific. You might want your block. But your belt isn't important here. Okay, so let's just kind of feel. We've got our feet, still got 2 feet. Okay, so let the right leg stretch out, and the left leg bend. And I would put something under your left knee. I mean, it's probably easy for some of you to have your knee free, but you could use a ball, you could use a blanket, a block is great. If I didn't have a ball, I'd probably use something that was soft, right? Like a blanket to stuff it under the leg. It's not going to be a long period of it, but you want to feel like something under that leg is soft for the knee on this one. And then we add a sandbag on the left thigh. This will be a little exploratory, this path, this little part of the pathway. So we got that movement of the right leg out, so it's extended. Okay, it's reaching. The foot is not necessarily doing anything active quite yet. So you'll take a belt and you'll hold it either kind of let it lift up. It doesn't have to be straight overhead. So I would just work with, get a hold of it. And I used to get in this habit of wrapping my belt around my hand, but I don't know what that idea was about. So it's really just I hold my belt and it moves my back muscles, right? So it gives them tone. It's toning the back. So I want you to develop movement of lifting the arms up. Now, if this is a struggle for your joints, you might decide not to follow this path and be forward here for the next few moments. But some of us will go up with the arms and bend the elbows so the chest is stretching. And so I have my hands holding my belt. It's a pretty wide hold, isn't it? And then the arms go back. Yeah. So bend your elbows. I know this is old school stretch. We've all been here. And if the position of the arms, again, this causes some kind of resurgence of issues, tissue issues, you might pass on it or do it for a few seconds and get out of it. And if you're okay with it, feeling how the muscles behind you, I know you can't see them, your lats are moving, and notice if your traps, they are traps. They're traps. There's stuff trapped in them. It's almost like that upper V in the back kind of is a little bit of a mystery there, mystery muscle, as far as its ability to release. So I want you to slide your hands out really far out of the belt, and then lower down and take the belt, sneak it around your back to your right foot and scoop up your foot with your belt. And just let the belt, it's going to be unbuckled, and just drop it so it's on the inside of the leg. And turn to your left with your ribs and bring your right hand to that left leg. And it could be up on the sand. It could be out to the middle. I can't quite get my knee in. Just my arm isn't going to reach there. I could, if I compensate in my back, right? I could lay on my back and scoop up my knee. But I want you to keep this lift of your spine. You just created it with this. So you're still working that spine developing angle, right? So if you can let your shoulders just find their center. It's not an easy position. And then if it's restrictive in your breath or your face gets kind of tensed up, you can let your eyes close, of course. The key is to make sure that sandbag is holding that left thigh downwards. Your right foot might get a little pivoty here. You'll notice the foot kind of is its own thing. Okay, now since you have this spine extension, rib lift, I'm going to let go of that touch with the right hand to the left leg. And I want you to kind of shift your right hand down and find where the belt is. You can look to your belt, you can move your head around, but you're just trying to keep this extension, right? So if you turn kind of around, try to go back to that left rotation with the waist. It's kind of like about the navel area. If it was like at the top of a jar, you're kind of turning it to the left, okay? So hold on to your belt with your right hand. And then bend through your right elbow and lean, but kind of notice we had spine extension. And then when I bend my right arm, well, I kind of get some flexion as well, but I still want to work on this lift. I have to be a little cautious not to overdo it or try to get my body down to the right leg. Just keep that grip. And the right arm releases behind your back. And ideally you have more of a lift up with your head, where you turn your head a little to the right. This would be your best position for your neck. But if your neck is not happy with this at all, you turn your head down towards the right leg. That's your other kind of to the side with your head, or you're turning down. So we're not like lifting up this high, we're leaning into that right side. I gotta make up my mind. Okay, your input is important. So how you feel with the movement of the right hand on the belt is important, right? So if I scoot my hand farther down and my right arm is on top of my leg, that's not the best thing. I want my right arm to start to move on the inside of the right leg. You can feel that weave of cross fiber friction in the torso. Okay, so that for me makes me turn my head down. It's a lot of torso stretch. So breathing. I know now that we're getting this one side worked up, but interesting to see how the right side feels, huh? So feel when you're centered and you're holding onto your belt. You're actually off center. We'll just pull on the belt to bring ourselves up. And then I want you to slide the belt off. And let's keep that that focus of the left knee. It's a little bit out. We'll add the right knee to that focus. So be careful of the right side of the back when you pull the knee and just kind of try to keep this inner lift. And then you'll bring the feet together and put sand across them. So you're in seated bound angle, right? Maybe it's sand ankle. We're in bound sand ankle. So as you work into Baddha Konasana, the feet together, the knees out, you might need some blocks under your legs. I actually think that would feel quite nice here. So I'll just add them. And get a feel when you're here, this movement of the pelvis, the lift out of the pelvis. It's kind of a bit of an awkward shape to just sit in. It's kind of vulnerable, isn't it? And at least you're in your own home space, it's fine. But when the motion is of the arms, I want you to bring the left arm up and turn the hand so it turns back. Now the whole arm's not going to suddenly spiral, but you'll get a feeling of things trying to rotate, like your elbow. So just let that left hand touch onto your back and feel the range of motion there. And then take the other arm to do the same thing. So you start with the right arm reaching, palm open, lift the arm, palms facing back. Bring that right hand to your right side of your upper back. And I think the first side has an advantage with pressure, but you can tell that there's a little difference probably for your tone on each arm. Your struggles are maybe different. Okay. And bring your arms up. Try to bring your palms to touching. Feel where the ribs are trying to lift. You don't have to squish your chin to your chest, but keep the brain up, arms open. Roll the shoulders. Just let them roll out. Try to keep the spine up. It's the only time you got to keep your spine up today. Okay. And then when you come back to centered shoulders, okay, just find the perspective of the midline. And then let's take the second side reach. So you'll take your sand off your feet. And I like the ball under my knee for that last side. So I'm going to put the ball under the right knee. Left leg stretches out. And I'm kind of kitty corner on my mat here a little bit. All right. So sand on the right thigh, ball under right knee or blanket or block. And then this time we're not going to do that centerpiece position because we're going to move along. So we'll take a belt, we'll bend the left knee and hook the belt under the foot. And this side, I want you to just notice the belt's it's just relaxed there, but you know, get a feel how the ribs rotate. Do you kind of, I guess we anticipate, you know, so our mind is ahead of the body, right? Oftentimes, most of the time. So when we turn, see if you can viscerally feel the movement of the abdomen, the guts, everything kind of rotate to the right. And then as the right hand comes back, left hand to the leg, Yeah, last time I didn't really notice the backhand very much, but this side it was obvious to me. So it's kind of interesting how you relate on one side to the next. So, feel how that left leg is. Like, do you like reaching through the foot? Do you want to be more passive with the foot? Because if one side, the left foot, is more active, likely your midsection workout is different than if it was passive. Still kind of interesting. Feel that inner lift of the ribs. Rotate with the breath. So see if the inhale is an awareness up and the exhale is a rotation internally, not to get somewhere, but internally to massage the organs, help the kidneys, right? This is a little more respiratory than vascular. And now you're going to set off to your belt. So you're going to reach the left hand down, get a hold of the whole thing, right? So you want both sides of the belt, both pieces together. And then bend your left arm. And I guess the idea would be just bend the arm. You don't have to be focused on the elbow, but you're leaning into that left side. You have to be careful at how much you pull on the back, on the side of the back. So feel how the ribs, so keep pulling your belt. But what I find interesting is that when I lean down, if I get too focused on the motivation of the belt holding, then I'm not really quite peeling and turning to the ceiling. So kind of peeling around in the rib cage. Right, the sand is definitely on that right thigh. It's helping you, but it feels like probably you could use more, right, when you have that weight. And then noticing the rotation, breathing. Okay, the right hand is behind you. If you get really excited and you want the arm to go up, I guess it's fine. We've done it before, but this idea is about this midsection circulation. Getting a nice, nourishing motion here through the waist. Now feel when you pull with your left hand, when you gently rotate, so head tilts down, and then let go of the belt momentarily, slide, but see if you can work your way up to sitting upright. And then we'll take the sand away and we'll shift quite a bit. So we'll take the belt off. I want you to scoot down in front of your bolster and lean your waist back on the bolster. Okay, and then take your belt, scoop up your feet, but kind of play with this one. Get very close to your, get your belt so it's easy on both sides. It has enough length. But see if you can reach below the knees with your hands, so they're not above the knees. So when you just bring your feet towards your tush and you try to lift your legs up, your hands are below the knees, at least to start. They might slide back by chance, but they're not above the knees. Your arms are reaching. It's a little bit of a stride with the back. Okay, so feel if you can just get a simple balance position here. Just feet together, legs obviously have to be together if the feet are. And then the arms are holding, and you can feel the bicep tone. You get that feel. The belt could be towards the heels. This feels better on my hip flexors. If my belt is lower on my foot, but that could just be the moment. Okay, I made it up. All right, so bend through the knees. See if that changes your perspective in your hips. Lift the chest. Give it a try. Okay, lower down the feet. And then keep a hold of your belt. Your hands will get one more workout. So lift the chest, inhale. Exhale, kick the feet up. Lower the feet down. Inhale. Feet all the way down. Exhale, kick the feet up. So the hands are either to the knee, just in front of the knee, just a little below. Lower the feet down. One last time. Gotta breathe. Exhale, kick the feet up. Okay, so get a feel of the movement path of the back of the legs. Last one, as the feet come down, before we get to changing the whole frame, then let the legs go up. And just notice if the back has a lot of pull to it. There's a strength into the muscles. And then when you lower the feet, just take the belt to the side, and then you're going to orient yourself to the wall. So let's take it so that when we turn and face away from it, you'll need a blanket. And you might as well have it so that it's going to be under the knees. And I don't think you want it to be too far out, because we're going to do wide stance dog and all these things that you don't want a bunch of stuff on your mat. So take a moment. If you need to take a breather right now, this is probably a good moment if you need to do a timeout or get something to sip on or take a 2-second nap. Okay, so I'm going to have you take, so that you have just the blanket, a couple blocks, and there in the front, I'm going to put mine a little this side so you can see what we're up to. Okay, so your block would be just on the very side of the mat, so you can easily get a hold. Now, when you're in hands, knees pattern, and the feet are at the wall, it's a different process of moving away, getting that resistance at the wall. The walls are great for practice. So I want you to let the hands shift forward, so you walk in front, so you have this full reach with the chest, and you'll reach the chest towards the floor. It's considered a heart opener, as you would know, but the forehead touches down. Okay, so feel that reach of the arms. If you need to make some movements, remember your head is kind of is a spot that's touching down. So if you need a blanket under your head, that's fine. You can add it for the moment. Okay, but get that feel of the reach of the arms. Okay, now slide the hands back, so you have to use your palms to push you back up. And then at this point, we're going to take a reach back with the hips. So move the hips back, but it's challenging to keep them moving back once you lift the knees up. So as you have the hands as wide on the mat as you can work with, you're going to lift the knees up and then still stretch the heels towards the base of the wall, or they could be a little bit up at the wall, because that'll put more into your arms. But feel if you can stretch into this kind of fundamental, it's a pretty baseline position, but the key here is to feel from the buttocks towards the heels, that work, that stretch. So if my head is between the arms, and if for any reason you need to come back down, you can come back down, right? You could reach back to child's pose. If it's too much right now, you could do either downward dog or child's pose for the moment. Personal choice. But feel where the reach is with your brain downwards. That's the key here, is brain down. Inversion. Reversing the circulation. So even if you're in child's pose, we'll give you full credit for it. Okay, it might just feel better for some. Okay, so those that are in child's pose are here, right? Your feet are together, your head is down. Those that are in dog pose are wondering when the dog pose is up. Okay, so we're going to step with our left foot first on this one. So coming on back to a position that you can step from. So you're going to step your left foot forward, and I want you to have your blocks. So you might as well have them up high. Get some help, right? Some help from some foam help. Now the right foot is back, and I'm reaching into to my heel, and my heel is up because it just feels better. If I lower my heel down, it's okay. I mean, I can try, but it's not touching. So I might as well just keep my heel up for the time being and work with the balance in my left leg. Just see what you got going on there. So work with the reach of the left knee, just above the ankle, not too far forward, not over the toes. And if you get a feel of that reach, I want you to work with the chest moving forward, feel a little bit of arch through the spine. Okay, and then you're going to turn that back heel, so you're going to pivot it so the side of your foot, right, is against the wall. You're not up on the wall with your heel, you have the side of the foot against the wall. It's a pretty big stance, isn't it? So you might have to scoot your left foot in. So the foot is still parallel away from the wall. And then you'll reach your block beside your left foot. So it's right besides the foot, not besides the little toe, but a little bit back from the left foot. You'll keep that left knee bending. And then bring the right arm either the hand to the waist or up towards the ceiling. So you're in an extended side angle. So feel where that turn is, feel where the waist is. You can let your left knee take a strong bend. It could be a little bit less, like you're pushing back, but play with the movement in the torso. Okay, try to keep that sturdy effort and through the hip joint here. Okay. Now, right hand to the hip, so you're holding on to that, and then feel where that left knee bends, and then I want you to work on coming up to standing, so you still have the legs the same. You keep the left foot pressing down as you come up. I think that's the key for me, is push down into my left foot, come up. I'm so grateful there's a wall. You can push your hand to the wall, and the left arm stretches forward, just at the height of the shoulder. Yeah, the wall is wonderful for this warrior stance. So keep that left knee stretching away from the wall. Stack the balance, breathe. Yeah, this one you could probably be in for a while because of the wall support. Okay, so you want to check your alignment here with the hip still opening. It's a hip opener. And now see if you can lower down that left hand. The right arm also follows with you. You're going to get your two blocks. You'll take the left hand in the block inside, and then you'll take a wide stance, turning to your right. Take both feet to that wide stance. So as you push out in towards the stance, I want you to have your blocks underneath obviously your hands, so to support you. But if the foot at the wall is getting a little bit tough, right, just for the skin, you can rotate the toes so you're pushing the foot so it turns in on both feet. You got to keep that even. And then when you reach the hips back, you lower down onto the blocks. I would just take them low as you can go with the blocks, and then stretch the chest down and the arch through the spine. With the weight of your head lower. You got a cat wanting to get out of here. Always. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so get a feeling of that reach. He doesn't want to drink out of my water cup, I guess. Get a feeling of that reach through the arms. And you can take the hands farther out, right? You don't have to have them pulled in. You might need to change it up so you feel like the stance works better for you. But it is a wide stance with both parts, right? Both extremity sets, hands and feet. Okay, and the feet don't have to be turned in, right? You could still have them flush, parallel. With the weight of your head lower. And notice if you feel even the weight of your head. It might not be something you can tell. And when you bring the weight back to your hands forwards, take your blocks, so you pivot them up to at least the second height and turn back to that left foot. Now this time, let's get the quad to stretch a little bit. So feel where the back knee lowers down to the blanket and manage the movement of that left foot a little farther forward. Now, some of you might have it already farther forward, but the idea is to reach through that low lunge. So the right thigh is stretching all the way from the knee. And there could be some guarding right around the knee that you've developed over time to protect it. So I would let the blocks be as high as you find comfortable. Again, if I go higher on the block, guess what? My knee gets more pressure. It's kind of the truth. You go up, the pressure goes straight down to the kneecap. So you got to kind of find what is going to work for this side. Maybe one side's easier than the other, but you want to feel where the skin and the front of that leg, right, can get some texture of reaching and length. Okay, even if your back knee is up, because the wall is great, it's a help. You know, if you don't want to put your knee down, that can work too. Okay, so take a moment here before we switch sides to feel where the movement is in the waist, the arch. Breathing. Okay, what I want to do the switch through today is that we switch the left foot back. So you'll come back, just a moment of it, and feel when you change sides, the right foot goes forward. We can start with the low lunge just because we're already on the base right now with the back leg, just to get the feature of threading through the legs. Okay, and then we'll do a little of that at the end of it, but we'll come up and keep the back foot pushing either, again, this side you might feel like, oh, I want my heel to the wall. For me, now to get my blocks up. And you might decide to lower the heel down a little bit. But have the right knee bending, right? No matter how it goes, even if the leg starts to flush back a little, see if you can keep it a little bendy. Keep it bendy. Stay bendy. So feeling when that foot, I think we've got kind of got it anchored in that the toes are forward, but yeah, feel forward with your toes. Toes and nose. Pivot the back heel. This is exciting. The work is on keeping that right knee aiming above the ankle. This is your most critical part of this right knee. You could be doing this for 30 years and you're still gonna, every once in a while, look down, the knee twitches in. So have the block besides the right foot. It doesn't have to be too close in. You wanna have enough space out with the block so you don't fall over. And when you turn to the left, yeah, you're gonna feel kind of low. It'll feel low, like you're kind of down with this whole position. So if you're feeling too low, you can scoot the right foot in. Don't worry about that. But when you do come up, you're probably gonna still want the foot back out. So balance the work here, left hand to the side or left arm is up. You can work on stretching it over. You can kind of play with the movement of the levers. But eventually I want you to work your way towards coming up and feeling that right knee. See, this is why you wouldn't want your foot too close to the wall, because then the knee would be over the ankle. So you probably have that standard balance in support with the wall. So have the left hand to the wall. Feel if your right hand wants to stay to hip, which is perfect. It could go up. There's no reason you have to have it up. You might feel very, like this is very helpful for your circulation into the pelvis, the hips, right? The femur, the load in the hip joint and the femur is so good on this position. So try to maintain that for a good minute, right? So we got probably another 5 to 6 breaths here to be with this shape. So you're just working on the knee bending. The weight is gradually down into the feet. Feel the corners of the feet. And then if the pelvis doesn't know if it should move back or it should center, just let it be neutral. So you're not trying to push it anyway. You're just letting it be right into the middle. And if you feel like lifting your arm, going towards the wall, of course, just kind of play with that dynamic. But as you work with that reach of that right knee forward, we're going to lower down the right and left hand to the blocks. They should be about the same height. That would be helpful. And then this time, pivot the back leg so the knee lowers down, right? So you get a feel of that quadricep. And we're going to eventually get a feel where the knee moves forwards, that right knee. I guess they both are kind of going towards the back of your mat, huh? Okay, now where you feel the torso, have a little caution with how you jut the ribs. See if you can find where the blocks are under the shoulder span. So let's say you had a moment of emergency, you had to stand up, you would be ready to go. Like the blocks are so close underneath you, you have enough perspective you can get up. You're not dropping. Okay, so the balance is down into that right foot. The left knee for me is on the blanket. For you, it might be up. Okay, now we're going to keep working through that left quadricep. So let's take our bolster. Okay, pull it on in. I suppose you could probably keep your blanket on it if you want. It's kind of fun to do pigeon this way with a lot of height. It's like doing pigeon pose in a chair. Okay, so you can have a blanket on it. You decide, I don't want a blanket. I've never done that before. Why would I do something different? So you could just keep it with a bolster. You can try it this way, especially if you never have. It's probably a good idea to try. So walk the right foot toe heel to the left side of your mat. And then I try to launch the right thigh forward. And this is where you might be so high up with your knee. It feels, it's kind of easy peasy when you have all this proppage. But instead of trying to put your knee down, just let it float. Just let the right leg float. If you need to go down to the bolster only, that's fine. Might not work for you. It's going to pull the musculature in the back a little differently when you have this much height. But again, it's mere inches, isn't it? Okay, now you can lower down, elbow. You could keep up with the hands on the ground. Yeah, I kind of like this variation. Just because it's there to use, you know, the props. So the back foot could be at the wall. You can move it up the wall a little bit. You keep it relaxed, still stretching your toes. Toe flexibility. And there's that right knee. If you are trying to push it down, I would pause on that. I would just let it be lifted. See if you can let the spine center. Okay, now bring the hands back so the elbows are perked up. And then you're going to lean to your right thigh. And you're just going to swish the side. So I'm going to bring left foot forward. I like to keep my blocks in hand. And then bring my left leg in the front and the right leg back. And as I lower down, right, I want to still find the beginning of this. So I bet the second side of your knee is different. Like it either goes down easier or it's higher up. This is a good one to work on your balance for the joints. And don't spend too much energy on thinking you should do something. See if you can find an interesting perspective. If you don't like the blanket, it will probably change if you get rid of it. Just a little bit. And if your knee is trying to push down, just keep in mind the left ankle on the side, right, is kind of holding your balance on the side of the foot. It's just not a normal place you balance your leg. It's the side of a foot. So it's fun to kind of just change your orientation with your levers. This is lever orientation moment. Right quadricep, just let it release. If your foot is too engaged at the wall, you can always scoot away from it. Breathing. How's the soundtrack for class? And feel how the belly has this downward kind of slack, right? It kind of moves, it has no choice, right? It's going to go with gravity. So just kind of feel how that positioning of your ribs angles the hips. And then we'll come back and we're going to just kind of lean into that left hip. So just be a little cautious here. You're going to lean into that hip. And you'll bring that left foot around, then you'll slide down off of the bolster. If you just had a bolster, not a blanket on, you could just be here. And I want you to take your bolster to the wall and then slide your blanket back. How many ways can we choreograph our practice, huh? Some days I wonder, huh? Just change it around a bit much. Let's find something familiar here. So take the bolster to the wall space, press it so it's flat, and then ball or block, either's fine on this one. So you'll lower down with your feet to the wall, okay? So I want you to feel your spine flat. This is key. So I'm going to put my feet up the wall. So you might have to be closer to the wall. You can't really do much. You're not getting your measuring tape out and looking at your screen, I don't think, with that. But you're placing the ball between your knees or your block. And the key here is just let the spine press down. So you might have to shift your shoulders, your elbows. Yeah, I forget how great elbows are. Sometimes on these back poses, they can be surprisingly useful, okay? So with the legs pushing inwards to the prop. So if you've got a ball, it's going to be a responsive surface, so that's really helpful. And the block doesn't respond to you, right? It just tells you where the range is. This is where you stay. So I want you to keep it so you're squeezing in. You have a limitation of that squeeze. That's probably maximum. You just move the knees towards each other. And then the key is the spine lengthens, flattens down. Okay, so lower your feet to the bolster. They kind of drop down, but when you have your feet on the bolster and you still have the spacer between the knees, push into your bolster so you can scoot a little bit back so you have more length for your spine. We don't want to skimp on spine length here. Okay, so my feet are not touching the wall anymore. Now I'm on a bolster. And then as my hands are touching my thighs, I'm going to press down into my feet, and then the awareness moves into my upper back. And then I push into the feet so it pushes towards the upper back, and I let the pelvis scoop just about 75% of your maximum scoop. So don't go all scoopy here, but lift your hips and feel how you lift them. Like when you did your lunges, you have this front line of the thigh lengthening every once in a while. So reach the arms back overhead or over shoulder, however you look at this one. Relax your hands. Keep your arms back if you can. If you can't, you come down with them. But as you lower your spine down, crackly, 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 maybe not. But let your spine center back to where it started. And feel the back of the pelvis rest. So I still have that spacer. So the key would be eventually you kind of forget about the spacer, but it's part of your practice. So feeling the shoulders back, inhale, ribs fill, belly fills. Exhale, you press and you lift the hips up. Okay, this time you can kind of feel the glutes and maybe a sense of the buttocks kind of pinch. You want to relax the buttocks here. That's a tricky one, isn't it? And squeeze into the ball or block. That's pretty tricky. Okay, now feel when you're squeezing in, see if you can contract the glutes. That's not hard at all. Lift the hips up. And then the arms go straight up. Remember when you have that belt, that kind of awareness, arms are towards the ceiling. And then let the spine lower down and the arms releasing. Okay, let's do one slide of the drawbridge with the arms moving with your motion. So you're lifting the hips and getting all the motions, I think, is really important. So when I get the full lift, I'm going to squeeze the ball or block and relax my glutes or my buttocks. Okay, so the inner thighs are fired up. Now lift the hips so that your glutes fire up, and then let the spine lower down. Still feel the glutes fired up. upper legs into the buttocks and let the spine shift down. Bring your knees to your chest. Remove the item between. And then as you hold on to the kneecaps, you want to make little circles. So you're massaging the outer rim of the sacrum. And give a feeling of both directions. Maybe you have a favorite direction to make the circulation occur in the sacrum. It's kind of interesting. You might have one side you prefer the movement pattern. Let's not analyze it too much, huh? Okay, take the bolster with your feet, push it over to the right side. I think you got room over there. If you got a sandbag or stuff, you're going to use it so you can push it back. But the bolster's besides the mat. The right leg relaxes down. If you're too close to the wall, just scoot back. And I want you to swing the left leg over to the bolster and be sure that your leg is supported. So for instance, for me on this one, it looks like I could use a little more padding on a little more height on my bolster. So I'm just gonna put a blanket up and then my leg is really easily relaxed that way. If it's a little up, you could use your sandbag to get your leg down too, but you want to meet the bolster right away if possible. And then add the weight, add the ball. If you don't have a ball, I would just pass on the whole idea with the ball. If you don't have one, it's just too challenging to figure that out. And it's a spacer. It adapts the back to anchor. Open the left arm and let your head roll to the left. Just feel how the ribs have that circulation into the respiratory muscles, into the breathing. Even if it feels easily to motion for you, the breathing, you don't have to try to effort more. But let the cycle of breath kind of lull you. Into a meditation. Feeling that we're working with this hip on the left side here. So if the left leg, this bolster is a big spacer, right? But there's no knee on the other side of it. So that's the difference from what we do with the ball or the block between. But it actually does feel like a little bit of a lift for the hip. So when you switch sides, you're going to slide the sand away. And notice how the hip is in flush out of the joint, how the knee crosses over. So when you take the ball away and you transition, you want to do something in between that feels good for you. So for some of us, it might be go straight onto the back, bring the left foot, hook it to the right knee, let the knee open. That might be kind of nice transition for the joint. It might be to just bring the knees to your chest and do back into that sacrum circular position, massaging the sacrum. It might be just feet on the ground in constructive rest. This to me feels good. Or the feet at the wall. That's good. So get the bolster in between sides, right? In between takes. And you'll move it over to the other side. If you've got the whole get up with the blanket, just keep it. All right, now when I switch sides, I want to find where there's some balance from my spine up into my neck. Left leg releases. It could be any way it wants to be. It could be bendy, it could be straight. But as you kind of roll on the pelvis to the knee going to the left, feel if you do swing the left hip under, if there's little habits you create so that you can feel really good with the rotation in the back. Notice those. Okay, anything kind of goes on this version. Mostly because you're on your back And spinal twists, any pattern on the back is extremely safe method of twisting spine, more than the seated work or standing work. So you kind of aren't going to miss out because you got your upper back touching the ground. Okay, but we all know that it's the middle to the lower that has the challenges usually, because the upper is like a big chunk, right? But some of us it's upper cervical, so that's probably not really all true for us. Some of us it's neck or more in that part of the spine. So let your head roll to the right. If you roll to the left and you notice that feels really good because your neck is tight, that'll come up probably more. If your knee is going left, your head is going right, it will feel more natural than your head going left with your knee. And so whatever feels better, just go with that. And if it's a struggle to have your head turned, then I would stay with that one. But feeling where there's a balance of rotation and movement in the pelvis is still, right? So the pelvis area is pretty still. It's stretching into the connective tissue of your right leg. Breathing slowly. Get a feel of the movement, massage of the breath in the digestive tract. So you have to kind of actively seek moving in that area. You can always pass on any ideas with these. Get a feel where the body weight is leaning into. Is it the hip? One hip is up, one hip is grounded. So you've got a good weight bearing and then resistance. So feel where your head moves back to center and then slide the sand away. And I want you to explore traveling towards getting your legs up. So I know some of you will go legs up wall, some might do legs up on like a chair, or the side of a couch, or anything that's maybe a little less pressure to the back, your choice. But you could also bring legs up the wall without a bolster too, okay? So when you roll to your side, you're gonna come up, and if there's something in between that last side that you did when you hooked your foot to the knee, of course take that. So some of you are probably like here, you wanna be there for a few moments. But you can have your bolster here. Let's say you're not using a bolster for legs up. I would have a blanket. Something really small would be fine with height. This would work out as well. You have just a blanket. You can also have a bolster and a blanket. I'm a big fan of that. If I can get into that, it just depends on my balance. So blanket is in the center, whether you have one blanket at the wall and a blanket here. You could have bolster, blanket, or bolster, or chair. Your feet could be on a chair. Those are going to do chair, shoulder stand. That's fine too. But I'll show the legs at the wall. So however you are with the height, whether it's short or high, you're going to put your seat close to the wall, and you're getting into a little bit of a cannonball shape. So the feet move back towards the wall, and then you'll roll the shoulder under and let the legs swing up. Okay, now the blanket under your head is not as critical in the beginning as it will become, but your work is on trying to get the legs to be elevated and supported. So that could be the legs up at the wall. It could be the legs up over, a chair or a couch or a bed. But you do want to get a feeling of some lift so that you can reverse that gravitational pull on the organs. It's the opposite of prolapse. Yeah, it feels good in your skin, on your face, pretty quickly. Okay, so maintain just the support of the legs. If you feel like your rear is not touching and you're getting a little bit challenged by that, you can just stay with letting it be apart from the wall. it's not going to do the work that you're trying to maneuver, reversing the flow of gravity. That's the feet up or the knees up if you're using a chair. So as I put the sand across the soles of my feet, and if you're not using sand, that's perfectly fine. I think the sand helps my back feel a little bit more safe and balanced through the lower back. But that just depends on you. You might need to change your props around. Right? You might have started with a blanket and decided you need to get rid of it. Now, it does feel pretty nice on the legs, circulation. You know, the circulation into the legs, wrapped around the skin, it's very helpful. So as we let the spine figure its way back towards the brain, and then the arms a little lower than the heart, relax the fingers. If you're in a different pose and that is helpful for your circulation, take that if you're into the chair. Eyes are releasing back. So feel the lift of the abdomen on your inhale. And the abdomen relaxing back to the spine on the exhale. Relax the mouth. You want that to be closed if possible, unless you have to do breathing through the mouth. Depends on your circulation and your sinuses. But if it's working fine through the nose, you want to try for that. But if it's a struggle, use the other port, right? The other portal for circulation, for the flow of oxygen. And take a few more moments for the laboratory of the body, right? To internalize, just reversing the effects of gravity on the heart, on the lungs, and mostly on the brain. If you notice your heart rate picks up, then you want to let the breath come out of the mouth, right? So we don't want to have nose breathing and then we get tripped up with that by struggle. So find what's relaxing for your heart. So with a slow, relaxed heart, upper body surrendering, you're feeling circulation towards the back of the legs up to meet the feet. Let's do a little bit of bend through the knees, and then you'll tailbone presses into the bolster or the blanket. That's key. And then when I move my legs away from the wall, bend the knees, so let that flush into the hips. If you don't have a sandbag, you don't have to follow this part. And then let the sand move away. And then shift your knees to bending. So if you can all meet at that position where your feet are at the wall versus the legs lifting, the heels. And then take a moment where you stretch both legs back up and relax your feet. You can kind of feel after they've had some weight on them. They're cooler, they're a little tingly, because the circulation and the blood flow all back to the vital organs. So that's a good sign, right? You want that to happen in your pose. That pose is working. If you want to stay here for a while longer, you're welcome to. Good for the immune system, right? It's pretty hardy work. And if you want to come out, then we'll find a finishing point. So bend through the legs. And if you're really high up, you might have a challenge getting out of this. So you could always scoot back from the wall. I have this old tendency to roll out of this, but there's versions of this where you scoot back and then you kind of roll out. So if it's too much for you to roll off of that top, scoot back and come up, but back up to the bolster or the blanket, whatever you got, and take a cross-legged position. Relax your eyes so they don't get cross-eyed, and then feel the back towards the wall. Feel where there's a mild arch in the spine, and let the mind find where the center. Hands reach up to join palm to palm in front of the heart, and simply bow into your heart center. And let's circulate a moment together to breathe in wellness from